small, tastefully sculpted bronze monument gleamed softly in the morning sun. General Calvin Ward, retired, had spent weeks designing it himself. A simple, dignified tribute to fallen soldiers, featuring a pair of combat boots, a helmet, and a single eternally blooming bronze rose. He'd placed it in a quiet corner of his front yard in the manicured but often soulless community of Patriots Landing, a quiet reminder of sacrifice and valor. He just stepped back to admire his handiwork, a moment of solemn pride when the assault began. "What in the tarnation is that morbid eyesore you've erected on your lawn, Ward?" The shrill, commanding voice belonged to Mrs. Dorothy Periwinkle, the self-appointed guardian of Patriots Landing's aesthetic and president of its notoriously overbearing homeowners association. She was marching across his grass, flanked by two scowling HOA board members, her face a mask of righteous indignation. "Good morning, Mrs. Periwinkle," Calvin said, his voice calm and deep, a lifetime of command subtly resonating beneath the surface. "This is a small private monument I've created to honor veterans, those who served and sacrificed." "Veterans," Dorothy scoffed, her eyes raking over the sculpture with undisguised contempt. "It looks like something you dragged out of a military junkyard. It's depressing, it's ugly, it's historical trash. And it's in direct violation of HOA Covenant's Article 7, subsection B, regarding unapproved yard installations and displays of a potentially offensive or value-diminishing nature." Before Calvin could even respond to this barrage of ignorance, one of Dorothy's companions, a weaselly man named Skip, darted forward with a can of lurid, bright red spray paint. With a vicious hiss, he began defacing the bronze monument, scrawling crude, insulting graffiti across the helmet and boots. "No, stop that!" Calvin roared, lunging forward. But Dorothy and the other board member physically blocked his path. He watched, his heart a cold knot of fury and disbelief, as his tribute, his quiet act of remembrance, was desecrated before his eyes. The red paint dripped like blood on the bronze. "That's what we think of your historical trash, Mr. Ward," Dorothy declared, her voice triumphant, as Skip finished his vandalism with a flourish, adding a dripping red "Get out" to the base of the monument. "Consider this your first and final warning. This thing is an insult to our beautiful, patriotic community." She then raised a megaphone, clearly prepared for this public shaming. "Attention, Patriots Landing!" Her amplified voice, sharp and accusing, echoed through the pristine streets. "Your HOA is taking decisive action against the unauthorized and deeply offensive war junk erected on Freedom Drive. This resident, Mr. Calvin Ward, a newcomer of questionable taste and dubious intentions, is attempting to turn our peaceful neighborhood into some kind of morbid military cemetery. He's a show-off, a boaster, trying to rub our noses in whatever depressing memories he's clinging to. We will not stand for it." Neighbors, drawn by the commotion and Dorothy's inflammatory rhetoric, began to gather, their faces a mixture of curiosity, fear, and for some, a disturbing, quickly kindled animosity. "A statue? What kind of statue is it?" one woman whispered loudly to her husband. "Dorothy says it's offensive. Looks like something to scare the children." "Yeah, what's that ugly thing doing here anyway?" another man shouted, emboldened by Dorothy's aggressive stance. "This is a nice neighborhood. We don't want that kind of depressing junk cluttering up the place. Dorothy's right. Get rid of it. Tear it down." Someone then threw a crumpled fast food bag that landed at the base of the defaced monument. "This is an outrage, Dorothy." Calvin finally managed, his voice tight with a lifetime of suppressed combat discipline, warring with raw personal fury. "That monument is a tribute to men and women who gave their lives for this country. For your freedom to stand here and spew this bile. You have vandalized a memorial. You have incited public hatred. You are a disgrace to the very patriotism you claim to uphold." "Patriotism?" Dorothy sneered, clearly enjoying the confrontation, as her other associate gleefully filmed Calvin's angry, anguished face with a smartphone. "Real patriots don't litter their yards with depressing war refuse, Mr. Ward. They fly the flag and obey their HOA rules. You, sir, are the disgrace, and we have it all on camera. Your aggression, your defiance, your bizarre attachment to this pile of junk." She then produced a pre-printed, official-looking HOA document. "And this, Mr. Ward," she said, thrusting it at him, "is your formal citation for erecting an unauthorized, aesthetically offensive, and emotionally distressing structure, for violating multiple HOA covenants, and for creating a public nuisance. You are hereby fined $20,000, payable within 7 days. And if that thing isn't gone by then, we will have it forcibly removed and disposed of as hazardous waste, and we will pursue your eviction for being a blight on this community." $20,000. Eviction? For a small, heartfelt tribute to fallen soldiers. Calvin, a man who had led troops in combat, who had faced down enemy fire, who had buried too many good men, felt a different kind of battle weariness settle upon him. This was a war against ignorance, against prejudice, against a profound, soul-crushing disrespect for sacrifice. The video, titled "Patriots Landing HOA Battles Residents' Ugly War Junk and Aggressive Outburst," Zrenia was, of course, online within the hour. It was a masterclass in slanderous editing, making Calvin look like an unhinged aggressor, and Dorothy the calm, heroic defender of neighborhood decency. The comments section was a predictable inferno of racist slurs, anti-military drivel from a certain misguided segment, and gleeful support for Dorothy's strong stand. General Calvin Ward, a highly decorated 4-star hero of the United States Army, a man whose strategic brilliance was legendary at the Pentagon, stood in his new suburban yard, his tribute to his fallen comrades defaced with hateful red paint, his character assassinated, his home threatened by a petty tyrant whose understanding of honor and sacrifice wouldn't fill a thimble. The injustice was a raw, burning wound. But as he looked at Dorothy Periwinkle's smug, triumphant face, he also felt the familiar stirring of a warrior's resolve. She thought she was attacking a statue. She had no idea she had just declared war on the deep, unyielding core of military honor, and on a general who knew exactly how to plan and execute a devastating counteroffensive. Her victory, he vowed, would be very short-lived, and her defeat total. The desecration of his veterans' monument with blood-red paint and hateful epithets was an act General Calvin Ward, despite a lifetime of facing down enemies, found profoundly sickening. The $20,000 fine and threat of eviction from Dorothy Periwinkle's HOA were not just outrageous, they were an insult to every man and woman who had ever worn the uniform. While Dorothy was busy on the Patriots Landing HOA Facebook page, regaling her followers with a self-aggrandizing, heavily distorted account of her brave confrontation with the neighborhood eyesore extremist, Calvin was on a secure line, not to a local lawyer, but to the Judge Advocate General's Corps, JAG. Specifically to a retired Major General who was a close friend and now a leading civil rights attorney specializing in veterans affairs and First Amendment rights for service members. "George," Calvin had said, his voice a low rumble of controlled fury, "I have a situation here that I believe falls squarely into your bailiwick. It involves an HOA, a veterans memorial I erected on my private property, vandalism that clearly constitutes a hate crime, and a series of actions that I believe are a blatant violation of my civil rights and a profound disrespect to the service." He then emailed George the extensive file of photos, videos, and threatening HOA correspondence he had already meticulously compiled. George's response, after reviewing the evidence, was swift and volcanic. "Calvin, this isn't just an HOA dispute. This is an abomination. This Periwinkle woman and her entire board are walking into a federal firestorm. We will prepare a response that will make their heads spin right off their overstarched collars." Dorothy Periwinkle, however, blissfully unaware of the formidable legal and potentially military forces Calvin was discreetly marshaling, saw his public silence and his professional cleaning of the defaced monument. He hired a specialist art restorer at his own expense, as signs of weakness and guilt. "He's trying to cover up his own vandalism now," she shrieked at an emergency HOA Patriotism Preservation Committee meeting, a committee she had formed that morning, consisting of herself, Mr. Skip the spray painter, and Mrs. Henderson, who was now tasked with monitoring Calvin for any signs of unpatriotic lawn maintenance. He knows he's been caught. He knows his ugly war junk is offensive. We must press our advantage. That monument must be gone by the end of the week, or we take it down ourselves and he faces the full financial and legal consequences. Her Patriotism Preservation Initiative quickly devolved into a campaign of escalating harassment designed to make Calvin's life unbearable. She pushed the HOA board to pass a series of ludicrous emergency amendments to the community bylaws, all clearly targeting him. Amendment 14C, all yard statuary, memorials, or commemorative installations exceeding 18 inches in height must receive prior written approval from the HOA Architectural Review Board, chaired by Dorothy Periwinkle, and must be constructed exclusively of pre-approved community harmonizing materials, i.e., beige plastic or faux stone. Bronze and other somber metallics are expressly prohibited as depressing and aesthetically jarring. Amendment 15, F. Any display deemed by the HOA president to be potentially controversial, politically charged, historically revisionist, or glorifying conflict is subject to immediate removal and a $500 daily fine until abated. The online slander campaign reached a fever pitch. Dorothy, using various anonymous accounts, began posting that Calvin was a military impersonator trying to gain sympathy with a fake memorial, or a disgraced ex-soldier kicked out for unknown crimes, or even that his monument was a coded signal to a local militia group he was secretly forming. She encouraged residents to be vigilant and report any suspicious military-style activity at Calvin's house. The comments section became a toxic stew of anti-veteran sentiment, from a fringe element she cultivated, racist attacks, and calls for Calvin's immediate expulsion. How could such blatant disrespect for service and sacrifice be tolerated, let alone celebrated, in a community calling itself Patriots Landing? Calvin, meanwhile, endured this siege with the steely discipline of a seasoned general. His home, his intended sanctuary, had become a battleground. But he was a strategist. He knew the importance of choosing your moment, of gathering your forces, of understanding your enemy's weaknesses. And Dorothy Periwinkle's were legion: arrogance, ignorance, and a profound underestimation of her opponent. The hints of Calvin's true identity, his lifetime of decorated service, continued to be hilariously, tragically misinterpreted by Dorothy and her informants. One Saturday morning, a motorcade of 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans with official U.S. government plates and a small, discreet military police escort vehicle, a standard security arrangement for a general of his standing when traveling for certain official, albeit low-profile functions, arrived at Calvin's house. Several uniformed officers and aides emerged, including a young, sharp-looking major who was Calvin's personal aide-de-camp. They were there to brief General Ward on an upcoming National Veterans Summit where he was scheduled to deliver the keynote address. They were inside for several hours. Mrs. Henderson, observing from behind her violently twitching curtains with a pair of high-powered binoculars she'd ordered from a spy shop website, nearly had a stroke. "Dorothy! Dorothy! It's a full-scale military invasion!" She shrieked into the phone. "Generals! Soldiers! Jeeps with machine guns!" There were no jeeps or machine guns. "They've surrounded his house. He's not just forming a militia, Dorothy. He is the militia. He's planning a coup, probably starting right here in Patriots Landing. This is it. This is the end of America as we know it." Dorothy, whose understanding of military protocol was derived from old John Wayne movies, was both terrified and strangely exhilarated. A coup, led by that yard trash-loving, monument-building maniac. I knew he was dangerous. This proves everything. We need to alert the National Guard, the president. We need to barricade the streets. She actually tried to call the local police station to report an imminent military takeover of a suburban neighborhood, but was politely dismissed as a crank caller. Calvin, during a brief, unavoidable interaction with Dorothy at his mailbox later that week, she had accosted him, demanding to know what his private army was doing in her neighborhood, tried one last time with almost superhuman patience to reason with her. "Mrs. Periwinkle," he said, his voice calm, but with an edge of cold iron, The monument in my yard is a tribute to sacrifice. It is protected under laws regarding respectful commemoration of veterans. Your continued harassment, your incitement of vandalism, your defamatory statements, and your HOA's baseless fines and threats constitute a serious pattern of abuse that will have severe legal consequences. I urge you, for your own sake, and for the sake of this community, to cease and desist. Dorothy just stared at him, her eyes narrowed with hatred and suspicion. Don't you threaten me with your fake laws and your imaginary army, Ward, she spat. That pile of junk in your yard is an insult, and it's coming down. And you phony soldier, you'll be gone with it. The HOA's lawsuit, drafted by the hapless Barry Fineworth, who was now also representing Dorothy in her other HOA-related legal skirmishes, a testament to the insular nature of their folly, was officially filed in county court. It was a masterpiece of incoherent rage and mangled legal citations, demanding the immediate removal of the offensive and structurally unsound war effigy, payment of all accrued fines, now exceeding $30,000 with new daily penalties for failure to maintain a non-controversial yard and possession of potentially hazardous metallic structures, punitive damages for inflicting emotional distress upon the patriotic residents of Patriots Landing, and, of course, Calvin's eviction. Dorothy, not content to wait for the slow grind of the county court system, decided to take matters into her own hands with a grand public spectacle. She announced via flyers and her ever-present loudspeaker a Patriots Landing Community Action Day and Monument Decommissioning Ceremony to be held in Calvin's front yard the following Saturday. All residents were invited to witness the heroic and lawful removal of the offensive war junk and to bring their own sledgehammers to help strike a blow for community standards and true patriotism. She even promised a barbecue afterwards. Calvin received the flyer. He looked at the crude drawing of a sledgehammer smashing his monument. A profound, cold rage, the righteous anger of a warrior whose sacred ground has been defiled, settled deep within him. This wasn't just about a statue anymore. This was about honor, duty, memory, and the very soul of what it meant to serve. Dorothy Periwinkle was about to learn what happened when you declared war on a four-star general of the United States Army on his own turf. He made a series of calls. To his friend, Major General retired George Hewitt, his lead counsel. George, she's planning a public demolition party for the monument. Saturday morning, my front yard. He listened. Yes, I agree. It's time for the uniform. Full dress, all decorations. And George, he added, his voice like Arctic steel, alert the local garrison's public affairs office, and perhaps the national veterans organizations. And I believe it would be appropriate for a contingent of the military police to be present. Not to intervene initially, just to observe, and to ensure that any desecration of a memorial to United States servicemen is handled with the appropriate federal attention. Dorothy Periwinkle was planning a barbecue and a demolition. General Calvin Ward was preparing for a full-dress review of her spectacular, self-inflicted defeat. The atmosphere in General Calvin Ward's front yard was thick with a toxic brew of mob mentality and self-righteous ignorance. Dorothy Periwinkle, resplendent in a red, white, and blue pantsuit that looked more like a parade costume, stood before his defaced veterans monument, a sledgehammer symbolically resting at her feet. Her Patriots Landing Community Action Day and Monument Decommissioning Ceremony was in full swing. A crowd of her most ardent supporters, some holding crude, hand-painted signs saying, "No war junk here," and "Keep Patriots Landing beautiful." Zrenya cheered as she raised her megaphone. The local news crew she'd invited dutifully filmed. "All right, true patriots of Patriots Landing," Dorothy's voice blared, amplified and distorted. "The hour of cleansing is upon us. This offensive eyesore, this so-called monument to who knows what, erected by the defiant and disrespectful Mr. Calvin Ward, will now be officially decommissioned and removed. We will not allow our beautiful, harmonious community to be blighted by one man's bad taste and his glorification of unpleasantness. Volunteers, prepare to strike a blow for community standards." Two burly men from her demolition crew stepped forward, hefting their own sledgehammers, grins of anticipation on their faces. Just as Dorothy was about to give the signal, a profound, almost preternatural silence fell over the assembled crowd. The only sound was the distant chirping of birds. Then from the front door of Calvin Ward's house emerged a figure that stopped every heart, silenced every jeer. It was Calvin Ward, but not the quiet, unassuming retiree they had tormented. This was General Calvin T. Ward, United States Army, resplendent in his immaculate Class A dress uniform. 4 silver stars glittered on each shoulder. His chest was a breathtaking constellation of medals and ribbons, the Distinguished Service Cross, multiple silver stars for gallantry, bronze stars with V devices for valor, the Purple Heart, campaign ribbons from conflicts spanning 3 decades. He moved with the quiet, unshakable authority of a man who had commanded armies, a man who had faced death and stared it down. Flanking him with equal solemnity were 2 other distinguished, powerfully built men in dark, conservative suits. His legal counsel, Major General, Returnee, George Hewitt, and a senior special agent from the Army's Criminal Investigation Division, CID. Dorothy Periwinkle stared, her jaw dropping, her face a mask of utter, horrified disbelief. The sledgehammer slipped from her nerveless fingers and thudded onto the grass. Her supporters were frozen, their crude signs suddenly looking pathetic and obscene. "Well, well, Mr. Ward," Dorothy finally managed, her voice a strangled squeak, a pathetic attempt at her usual bluster. Playing dress up now? Is that some kind of Halloween costume? Trying to scare us with fake medals? It won't work. This junk is still coming down." But her voice lacked all conviction. Terror was now her dominant note. General Ward ignored her sputtering. He calmly stepped forward, his polished boots gleaming. He didn't need a megaphone. His voice, though not loud, resonated with a lifetime of command, cutting through the stunned silence. "Mrs. Dorothy Periwinkle," he began, his gaze like Arctic steel, "you and certain members of this homeowners association have made numerous pronouncements about patriotism, honor, and community standards. Allow me to offer you and this assembly a somewhat more informed perspective." He gestured to his aide, who had appeared as if from nowhere with a portable projector and screen, which were now rapidly being set up. "For the past 35 years, General Ward stated, I have had the profound honor of serving the United States of America in its Army. The tin medals you so contemptuously dismiss represent the blood, sacrifice, and valor of American soldiers, my soldiers, in combat operations across the globe." The screen flickered to life. It showed not grainy HOA footage, but crisp official Department of Defense video. General Ward, younger, in combat fatigues, awarding medals to his troops in a dusty, war-torn landscape. General Ward addressing the nation from the Pentagon. General Ward at a solemn White House ceremony, receiving the Distinguished Service Cross from the President of the United States for extraordinary heroism. The final image was a dedication plaque, identical to one that should have been on his monument. "To the fallen of the 101st Airborne Division, Sangin Valley, their sacrifice will never be forgotten." The ugly war junk, Mrs. Periwinkle, General Ward's voice was low, but seethed with a righteous fury that was terrifying to behold. "The historical trash that you and your associates repeatedly vandalized with hateful, racist graffiti, and which you now stand poised to publicly destroy with sledgehammers, is a personally funded monument. It is a sacred tribute to the memory of the brave young men and women of my former command, the 101st Airborne, who made the ultimate sacrifice in the Sangin Valley, Afghanistan, defending the very freedoms that you so casually, so arrogantly abuse." A collective gasp, a wave of horrified realization, swept through the crowd of onlookers. Many of Dorothy's supporters now looked physically ill. Some began to back away, shame and fear etched on their faces. "A general," one woman whispered, clutching her chest. "A 4-star general? Dorothy, you didn't just deface a statue, you spat on the graves of heroes. You are finished." General Ward continued, his voice like the crack of doom. "Your actions, Mrs. Periwinkle, the desecration of a veteran's memorial, The incitement of racial hatred and violence against a United States Army general, the willful destruction of private property, your slanderous public statements, constitute not only a profound and unforgivable disrespect to all who have served and sacrificed for this nation, but also multiple, serious violations of state and federal law. These include, but are not limited to, violations of the Stolen Valor Act for misrepresenting and demeaning military service and its symbols, federal hate crime statutes, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. He then gestured to the CID special agent and several uniformed military police officers who had now, with grim efficiency, moved to surround Dorothy Periwinkle and her visibly terrified HOA board members. Given the nature of these offenses, particularly those involving the desecration of military symbols, the targeted harassment of a senior military officer, and the incitement of public disorder with clear racial and anti-veteran bias, I have formally requested the intervention of the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice. The U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division and the FBI are now conducting a joint investigation into the activities of this HOA and its leadership. The lead CID special agent stepped forward, his face impassive. "Mrs. Dorothy Periwinkle," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit destruction of property, willful damage to a memorial honoring United States veterans, inciting a hate crime, and potentially other federal charges pending the outcome of our full investigation. You have the right to remain silent." Dorothy let out a strangled, animalistic shriek of pure terror and collapsed onto the grass, a blubbering, incoherent wreck as the MPs professionally, dispassionately handcuffed her. Her demolition crew had dropped their sledgehammers and were trying to blend into the horrified crowd. Barry Fineworth, her lawyer, who had inexplicably shown up for the victory, looked like he was about to have a stroke. General Calvin Ward then addressed the stunned community and the now frenzied national press, who had, of course, been alerted by the general's public affairs liaison. "Let this day serve as an unequivocal lesson," he said, his voice ringing with the moral authority of a lifetime of service. "The honor of those who have served this nation, who have laid down their lives to protect our freedoms, is not a commodity to be debated by homeowners, associations, or defaced by prejudice. It is sacrosanct. This monument will be restored. It will stand as a testament to their courage, and justice will defend that honor always." The legal and public obliteration of Dorothy Periwinkle and the Patriots Landing HOA was swift, total, and a national spectacle. Dorothy was convicted on multiple federal charges and received a significant prison sentence, her life and reputation in utter ruins. The HOA was hit with a $4 million civil judgment from General Ward and was summarily dissolved by federal court order. Its leadership disgraced and facing further individual civil suits from other residents they had terrorized. The videos Dorothy had so proudly posted to shame Calvin became viral evidence of her own monstrous arrogance and bigotry, viewed by over 50 million people and used in military academies as a case study in civilian disrespect. General Ward, true to his word, had the monument professionally restored to pristine condition. With the settlement funds, he established the Ward National Veterans Memorial Park and Leadership Institute on a large tract of donated land. It became a hallowed place of remembrance, education, and a center for developing ethical leadership based on the principles of service and honor. His book, The Bedrock of Honor, A Soldier's Stand for Patriotism and Principle, became an instant national bestseller, inspiring millions. And yes, any individual with a documented history of disrespecting military service, engaging in discriminatory harassment, or promoting hate speech was explicitly and permanently barred from setting foot in the Ward Memorial Park. The final, uniquely fitting scene, several years later. A gaunt, broken Dorothy Periwinkle, her once imperious demeanor long since crushed, is part of a supervised work crew at a sprawling, historic national military cemetery. She is on her hands and knees meticulously and miserably, scrubbing grime and bird droppings from the bases of endless rows of identical white marble headstones, each one representing a life given in service. She looks up, her face streaked with sweat and dirt, and sees a group of bright-eyed JROTC cadets respectfully placing a wreath at a prominent war memorial. On a small portable television, a groundskeeper is watching nearby. General Calvin Ward, in civilian attire but radiating an undeniable aura of command and integrity, is giving an Independence Day address from his Veterans Memorial Park. True patriotism, General Ward is saying, his voice resonating with deep conviction, is not about loud slogans or enforced conformity. It is about quiet sacrifice, unwavering duty, and the courage to defend the ideals that make this nation worthy of that sacrifice. It is about honoring those who have stood the line between freedom and tyranny. Never, ever allow their honor to be diminished, their memory to be defaced, or their sacrifice to be forgotten by the petty winds of ignorance or malice. The camera pulls back from Dorothy's wretched, tear-streaked face as she scrubs another headstone, then soars over the magnificent, reverent expanse of the Ward National Veterans Memorial Park. An illuminated carven granite sign at its entrance reads, Ward Veterans Memorial Park. Honorable Justice. The imagined audience would be on its feet, a thunderous, heartfelt salute. That's a 5-star takedown, General. Dorothy got her permanent dishonorable discharge from society. Honor, courage, commitment, and karma. Justice in this case was not just served, it was enshrined with full military honors.